OCD Live. I'm Greymond, and let's get to some questions. So the questions we're gonna do just two today, just because I'm a little bit sick and I don't know how much my voice can hold up. The one question I wanted to answer has to do with magical thinking. So if OCD tells you that, like your mind tells you that. Well, what if you're wishing for something but something negative, like if you're wishing for it, it's gonna come true and all of this kind of stuff, right? Um, so it's creating a wish that you don't want and then feeling afterwards like, well, now that you've created it, it's gonna come true, like praying for it or wishing for it or something like that. So this is magical thinking. And this is very common in OCD to feel that way because, again, OCD is all about the emotions. So it's going to send you emotions as if the situation is true and as if it's a real worry. And the more you focus on that, the more it's going to send you these thoughts. So you're going to feel like this is real, this is bothering me, and you're just going to get deeper in the more you think about it. So the correct way to handle this situation is that the thought comes in, okay, what if I wished for something? Or the wish comes in that um, like in this situation, you know how I usually say the thought comes into your mind. In this case, it's an actual action of a wish or a possibility of an action of a wish, depending on the situation, right? I don't know it in depth, but it could be either or, really. But when the situation happens, you have to say it doesn't matter, this is my OCD, and move on and refocus that attention. Because as soon as you start to refocus that attention, your mind's going to see that and it's going to understand the situation to not be important since you're not focusing on it. And it's going to move on. Because if you're not focusing on it, it's not going to send you any, anxiety or anything like that. So as always, it's coming from you. If you're paying attention to something, you're going to get more of that, no matter what it is. In this case, it's the wishing for something. It could be anything else. So as you are paying more attention to something, you're going to get more of it. And as you're paying less attention to something, you're going to get less of it. So that's why it's very important for you to refocus. Now, I also had a question asking about refocusing techniques. And this is kind of the thing that I really wanted to get into in this show, because I always say refocus, do something else, but how, right? So when you're in the state of anxiety, it's very, very hard to pull back, obviously. So I would recommend for you, first of all, is not to get yourself in, because if you are if you just had a thought and it's still not really attached to you, like it just gave you the possibility, you're gonna have a lot easier time letting go of it than you're gonna have, say, 3 days from now when you've already thought about it and kind of worried about it, you know? So, or depending on how fast your thoughts switch, or maybe 3 hours from now, So right away, try as much as you can to divert your attention by giving your mind anything else to attach itself to. So again, let's go over how you do that. Find a go-to activity for your mind. So when I have OCD thought, I am going to, I don't know, play video games, call somebody on the phone, I'm gonna watch a show. But watching a show is kind of iffy because, when you watch a show, your mind can still be going, so you're focusing on another activity, but not really, because in your mind you're still thinking about it. So something that takes control over your mind and stops your mind from having to think about this OCD stuff. Going out with friends is really good, because when you're out with people, you're not going to be able to really focus on OCD as much as you would being by yourself. Just because they're going to start talking to you, there's going to be different things happening, and this is exactly what you want. You want to give your mind visual stimulation, you want to give your mind auditory stimulation, and you want to give your mind a change in environment. Those things will make your mind work harder on real life stuff and will push it away from the OCD, because your mind is not, endless in its limits of, how much it can process. So now that it needs to process your real stuff because you are in this environment, it's going to pull away from the OCD. So it's very, very important for you to change your, like where you are and what you're doing when you have an OCD thought. And I know that really most of the time when you have a severe OCD thought, when I had OCD before I got over it, everybody kind of wants to just sit in the room and cry and worry and be upset. You don't want to go out, you don't want to do anything else. You really just want to stay in your environment. But that the reason why you want that is because your mind says, this is the easiest way for me to figure things out. This is the easiest way for me to solve the OCD problem and see if I'm safe or not. So even though it feels like it's something you should do, it's really the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't be doing that. So just very, very important. Also, you want to be doing mindfulness exercises every day. So we're gonna do mindfulness in a separate show. I do have a book out on it. I don't have it on the website yet. I do have it on Kindle and on iTunes. I'll put it on the website in the next few days. Anyways, just being sick really sidetracked me with everything. But living in the present moment, staying in the now, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future. You are living in the now. This is right now, this moment, this is your life. What happened in the past doesn't matter. What happened in the future, what's going to happen in the future doesn't matter. And OCD will always try to tell you, well, what if, everything catches up to you? What if you're a bad person? Or what if you're not living, you're being like a fraud, like you're not living your real life. All of these things do not matter in the now. Right now, is anything happening to you? No. The only thing that's happening is OCD is ruining your life. That is the only thing that's happening. So you want to kind of put that into perspective for yourself, that you're not going to fall for these OCD tricks. Because all of it is a trick. Nothing is going to catch up to you in the future. Nothing happened in the past. Nothing is going to happen. Things are going to happen, but not OCD, related worries. So it's just very important for you to always stay in the now, stay busy, and always push your point of view, your logical point of view, not the OCD point of view. So always say, no, I logically know that this, and this, and this, and don't go with your emotions. The biggest thing I see all the time is that people start to worry about, well, why am I feeling that way? If this is all not true, why am I feeling that way? I hear this, honestly, I hear this every single day. And the reason why they're feeling that way, and I was feeling that way and everybody else, is because your mind thinks it's true. So if your mind thinks it's true, it's going to send you thoughts as if it's true. That's the whole big trick of OCD, that it's your mind is sending you thoughts, feelings, physical reactions as if the thought is true. So you're going to feel like, well, why am I, these thoughts and feelings and everything, your mind is generally convinced that the situation is real. So it's reacting exactly as it would if the situation was real. The problem is that the situation is not real. So you have to kind of disregard all of these things that your mind is sending you, because it's like it's on autopilot, and the autopilot thinks there is, death about to happen, basically, when there isn't. So it's sending you all these thoughts and, trying to warn you and all of this kind of stuff. It's just about not paying attention, really. And it will stop. I promise you it will stop. Some people ask me, how I have such a high recovery rate in my program. And it's just because how hard we work on the recovery. I find that people who work the hardest recover the fastest. And by working hard, I mean pushing through the thoughts, you know? So no matter how much they scare you, no matter how much their anxiety they're giving you, pushing through and doing what you want to do. That's the thing, you know. I always to suggest make a list of like things that you want to do when you get over OCD and start doing them now. Start acting like you've already got over it, that you're already fine, there's nothing else wrong. Because when you start to live your life as if you don't have OCD, you send a clear message to your mind saying everything is fine, you don't need to send me more of these thoughts, you don't need to do this to me anymore. There's no need, there's no danger. And eventually your mind will get it. I know it takes a while because your mind will really want to make sure that you're safe before it stops sending these thoughts to you. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it's just about just kind of every day working on it. And you know, it's work, you know, it's not easy. It's every day. It has to be your job to persevere and to get better. So, and you know, I know what I'm talking about because I had really severe OCD, you know, and I got over it. So, you know, and I suggest the best way kind of to get over a specific theme is just to say, okay, for example, my theme is, I don't know, driving OCD. Driving OCD is extremely common, by the way. If you guys out there having driving OCD thoughts, don't think you're alone, you know, very, very common. So for example, your theme is driving OCD. So you say, okay, anything to do with driving OCD thoughts at all, I'm not going to pay attention to. So you're not trying to decipher which thoughts are true and which are not by, you know, kind of putting them in categories, analyzing them, all of this. You're just saying all across the board, painted with a very wide brush, you know, doesn't matter. This is my driving OCD stuff. I'm not paying attention to it. I'm moving on. When I get this thought, I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to check. I am going to move on. And following through with it as much as you can. Because every time you are put in a situation where OCD kind of strikes, this is an exposure. And I think we talked before about exposure and response, but exposures are really important to your recovery. That when you have an OCD exposure, you are your mind is very much watching what you are going to be doing. So if you choose to pay attention to the thought or choose to pay attention to the situation and worry about it, your mind will say, oh, okay, well, this person still thinks it's relevant, so I am going to send more of these thoughts. And again, the same thing. If you're put in the situation where you get an OCD thought, but you refuse your reaction, your mind's gonna say, "Oh, okay, well, maybe it's not important anymore. I better, you know, drop it, bring something important to the front of the mind, or to the front of the attention." You know, so it's just one of those things where you don't avoid things that scare you, and at the same time, when you are faced with them, you have to react correctly. Because if you don't avoid, which I know I say in all my books, like don't avoid, think of that. But if you don't avoid, you have to make sure that you are prepared for the fight. Because if you are if you are in a situation and then you do the wrong thing, like you start to really kind of, you know, get reassurance, analyze all the stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, you're going to feel worse. And your mind is going to get a very clear signal that you are still scared, that you are still seeking reassurance. That means the thought is important and it's going to send you more of it, you know? So kind of when you are going into battle, be prepared for the fight. Do you know what I mean? You can't be all kind of like unsure and all of this kind of stuff. And it's just practice. Keep doing it, keep going. Don't avoid situations, but at the same time, be prepared. So, for example, if you have, again, we'll go with driving OCD, and you drive every day to school or to work or whatever, right? Before you even go, say to yourself, I'm gonna get my thoughts. I'm probably gonna be in a situation where I'll think that I ran over somebody or something like that. I am not going to pay attention to that situation. I am going to move on. I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to check the car. I'm not going to do any of the stuff that I normally do. I'm going to move on. And it doesn't matter what kind of OCD you have. I'm just giving an example with the driving OCD because it's pretty straightforward of what people usually do to get reassurance and all of this. It's a very common situation. So, but similar for all of those things. And as you keep doing them, you will feel better. You will feel that it's lifting, that everything is starting to be not so severe. And it's going to take time. It's not going to be like, okay, you disregarded the thought today. Tomorrow, you're not going to get any more thoughts. You will still get thoughts, but your mind will start to let go because it will start to get the signal that it's not important. And little by little, it's going to test the waters. It's going to send you more thoughts, different types of thoughts, just trying to test you, basically. And it's not doing it to kind of mess with you. It's just trying to do it to see if you're safe, So as you keep saying, okay, there's nothing wrong, I'm safe, I'm fine, it's gonna move on, And I promise you that, honestly, like, I've helped a lot of people recover. I know what I'm talking about. So it is all about how you handle the thought. And I think that that's why my recovery program is so successful, is because I am always there for the person, well, as much as humanly possible. Um, so when the person gets a thought, they can always call me for their reaction, like to make sure that they have a correct reaction or message me or whatever. And we really make sure that the person reacts correctly, and that's why they see the recovery happen so fast. And again, it's different for everybody. I say fast, in a sense of reprogramming the brain, so a few months is fast. Sometimes people think like, oh, I can do it in one day. No, but you can do it in a few months. And what's a few months compared to the rest of your life? Because that's the thing, is with OCD, it doesn't really go away, until you make it go away. It's if you do nothing, and if you keep going and keep living your life with OCD, kind of trying to what they call managing it, so they manage the situation rather than get rid of it, you'll have it when you're 80 or 90. So it's not going to go away. The only way to make it go away is for you to actively fight the thoughts and actively tell your brain what you want to think about and what you don't want to think about on a consistent daily basis. Consistency is very important here. Don't be afraid to expose yourself to these situations, because if, say for example, you're afraid of, I don't know, driving, that we'll go with. If you're driving once a week, or if you're driving once a month, it's not really going to help your situation. You have to be driving every single day. Just a little bit. You don't have to be driving for a long time, but every single day you have to do something that kind of scares you with regards to OCD. Because the more you do that, the more you actively pay attention to this stuff and refuse it. Like, pay attention to, I guess not pay attention, but refuse the situation while making sure that you are actively present, So you're present, you're dealing with the reality of the situation, which is you driving, and you're not paying attention to all these other thoughts every day. But you just have to make sure that this, because it's an exposure exercise, so you want to make sure that it's a very clean exposure exercise, that you're not doing anything additionally, So, okay, well, I'm going to be driving, but I'll make sure that I'm recording myself, or I have somebody in the car, or something like that, So all of these things are bad. Do not do any of those things, because the more you do them, the more you'll get sucked into it, and this is going to be your go-to way of handling things. And again, it's about, if you start to do that, you start to manage your OCD, and you're not getting better. In fact, you're getting worse, because you're sending your mind a message that this type of situation is scary, So try to do a little bit. If, say for example, you're afraid of I don't know, touching a door handle, so you think you're gonna get like HIV or something else. Touch a door handle every day. You know, if you're afraid to touch public door handles, like in public places, do something that's less than that. Maybe like your front door or something that scares you a little bit less. So it's every day you're building upon your success from a previous day. And if you're having a hard time and you feel like OCD is kind of overwhelming you, you can pull back and say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to pay attention to it. This is my usual thought. Again, I'm disregarding the thought. I'm moving on. So I guess that was the show for today. I will see you guys next week. If you have any questions, you can email me at info@youhaveocd.com. Also, if you visit youhaveocd.com, there is my recovery program there, my books. There's some free material there as well. And I thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next week.